The show where there are no penalties, nothing is offside, and everything is fair game. This is The Gloves Are Off.
Hello and welcome to another edition of The Gloves Are Off. I'm Moses Woldu, and we got a great show for you once again. I'm pleased to be joined by this guy. No surprise here on the left of your screen. It's our good friend, Andrew Brethauer from the Lloydminster Source. How are you?
Doing great. Yourself?
Excellent. And we have another guy to keep you out of trouble, or if you can, feel free to kind of take him to the detachment. We're pleased to be joined by Inspector Suki Manj of the Lloydminster RCMP, who is bringing the law to The Gloves Are Off. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. And I guess we will begin with some hockey. Of course, with hockey going on in the border city, it seems fitting that we got to start with it. However, we're not going to talk about Lloydminster and the Bobcats per se, but this involving the Russian Hockey Federation. Why I say that? Well, during the World Hockey Championships earlier this year, you had Russia take on Canada. Canada smoked the Russians, and it seemed like in poor sportsmanship, Ilya Kovalchuk, who was the captain of the team, said, you know what, boys, let's get off the ice and not stay for the Canadian national anthem. Well, that's a big no-no under the IIHF, and it resulted in an $85,000 fine, which I'm sure really has got to hurt the Russian Federation in terms of rubles and the exchange rate. But outside of that, the Russians say, you know what, we didn't do that intentionally. We saw the gate open. We decided to skate out. We had no idea. Do you guys buy that argument? And Suki, we'll start with you as you're our guest.
Well, they didn't start playing hockey this year, right? So tradition has been forever, and I think personally our organization is built on tradition, and you don't have to be taught every single thing. I think they know that that's the case, and I think it's deliberate. And I'm sure they had planned this, but they didn't plan to lose. So I think it was an ignorant thing to do, on my opinion.
It's, like you said, it's history. It's not like Russia and Canada haven't played each other. You know, kind of smaller tournaments, right? Back in the 70s and that. They're used to this. Go on the other side of it, when Russia was winning World Juniors and how they were acting after that, and everyone had to stay and put up with that nonsense, and then the fallout from them on the plane and all that. Like, this is tradition. It's part of the game. I don't even know when you actually think it's appropriate to walk off the ice in any international tournament.
Is it kind of the equivalent to, say, for example, in the Stanley Cup playoffs, you had the losing team deciding to skate off the ice before they shake hands? Is it something similar in terms of that? Like, you know it always happens. No matter how bad the series was, no matter how much you hate the person that you're playing against, you shake hands at the end of the line, right, at the end of the series. Is that kind of how we're seeing this, as that type of snub where these people are just completely wrong in this case? I'm talking about the Russian Hockey Federation.
I bet if you go to a place like Japan that's just getting off their feet with hockey, they'll know the traditions of hockey, and they wouldn't have done that. They wouldn't know that that's not the right thing to do. So I think it is a snub. I think it was deliberate, but it's part of hockey, and I think it's funny because when the juniors, when they had that riot on the ice, everyone thought that was the end of hockey. I just think this brings in a little bit more flavor for the next time.
All right, guys, how about this? We'll move on to Calgary, and it seems that they have a bright future in store for the sporting outlook for the city. A $890 million multi-purpose facility that would house both the Stampeders as well as the Calgary Flames, and possibly the university with the University of Calgary Dinos also in the mix. $890 million seems very, very steep for what would be, granted, a gorgeous facility, but when do you say enough is enough when it comes to using public funds for private arenas, essentially? And Andrew, like, where do you kind of see this going?
See, I'm on the fence of as soon as you spend $1, enough's enough. Because I don't believe businesses should get public funding to house a team. And I hate when teams use the I'm going to leave, I'm going to go somewhere else if we don't give us money. It happens in every sport.
Edmonton, that happened to with Daryl Cates, who said he'll move the team to Seattle. Went to Seattle on a trip.
Like, how many NFL teams threaten that they're going to move to LA? I think every single team has done this. I don't want those teams doing it. They make millions of dollars, sometimes billions of dollars off of people coming and watching them. Now the public has to pay for them more. You're a business, and like any other business, I'm not getting public money to build my business in a city. Why should a special team that only houses 23 athletes get that special privilege?
And I'm on the border on this one too. I think, but precedent has been set. I think there's a lot of communities that have done this, like examples. There's some ones that have worked, and then there's some that haven't. So I think if they're really serious about it, they have to do a lot of consultation. This day and age, when every penny counts for all of us, yeah, you're right. I think it's going to be one of those things that's a tough sell. So I know that in other communities, they've done plebiscites and votes on just that one particular. Maybe that's the way to go.
Right, you've seen a lot of people take the other stance where fans are yelling at city council. Good example is the city of Glendale. We're going to talk about this off camera, about how you have fans berating city officials for not helping this team. And that city is pretty much bankrupt, if not so. You also have to look at this. Is there maybe an alternative to it, perhaps? I'm using this as it's a small sample size, but the Lloydminster Bobcats, they're a community-owned team. Is there a possibility that maybe, like Saskatchewan's another community-owned team, is it possible that maybe the city of Calgary could get some shares of a team, or maybe not just the city of Calgary, I'm using them as an example, but any city that has a pro sports franchise, then maybe could start taking samples? Is that the better idea?
See, if they're doing that, then the city would own the rink, and they just rent the space out. In Sarnia, we have the rink, RBC Center. The Sarnia Sting rent the facility. Now, they're the main tenant. They get to do a lot of calling the shots, but it's the city that runs it, pays for it, and books the ice. So throughout the entire day, you have AAA hockey playing, you have public skating. I could go and rent the ice, and then the Sting have their time booked off. But everything's owned by the city, and the city paid for the rink. They put it there, and it's a city-owned facility. That's what I think. If you're going to do that, then the city should reap the rewards. And you look at all these other examples where teams negotiate these contracts where they get everything. They get all the naming rights, they get the concession, they get anything that happens in the rink goes to the team, but they don't pay for the rink. So it's like, if you're going to do that, fine. It should be an investment for a city. If Calgary's going to put up a quarter of the cost, they should get a quarter of the revenue back as well.
I want to get to this, guys. Talk about joint practices. Things can get heated in sports or with anybody, but imagine being in a confined space with them for 5, 6, 7 days a week where you're constantly hitting them. That's what the NFL has decided to do this year, holding joint practices. You saw this with the Washington Redskins and Houston Texans. You saw this with Des Bryant getting in a fist fight with the Cowboys taking on St. Louis in LA, funny enough. But you look at all these joint practices and what's coming of it. Coaches don't like it. They're saying, we'll fine our players if they're getting into fights. What do you make of this? Should the NFL just stop this ridiculous idea altogether? Suki.
I just want to know what the purpose of it is. Like, what is the purpose? What are they getting out of it as a team? Sharing your plays, sharing your techniques. This is your competition. Like, do you want to give them your secrets? To me, that there's a whole different side of it that I'm looking at this. Does it make, like, I'm not going to sit down with the criminals of town and decide how I'm going to fight the crime. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I look at it that way. But publicly, it's not that they need any more publicity and fanfare, but they're getting a lot out of this. There's a big bang for buck, I think, for this decision.
Well, it looked like, I guess, Jerry Jones, the owner of the Cowboys, is more like Don King. He's promoting this stuff. Yeah. So what's your take on it, Andrew?
I don't see that. I don't see the point in what everyone's getting. Like, especially at this time of year, you're trying to make your team, and now you're playing another team. Like, I see that maybe in competition, but that should be your internal competition. Like, at this time of year, I don't want to be looking at another team. I want to be focusing on what I have to do to make my team and bettering my opponent. But if you're playing someone else, you immediately get rid of half your team because my offense is going to play the defense. It's not like your secondary guys can come in. So I don't understand why we have two teams together, especially in the NFL, the juggernaut that is the NFL, why they need to combine, and with the rosters they have, it makes no sense.
All right, guys, we're going to take a commercial break, and when we return, it's either Mike Trout or Josh Donaldson, two biggest unanimous names that will be the front runners for the AL MVP. We'll ask these guys who they think should be that guy. Come here.